So Copenhagen and Tokyo are both huge on biking. I mean, look at this. But there are some big differences between the two places, and I'm gonna try to figure out which city is better when it comes down to cycling. Let's compare the two cities real quick. Tokyo is a megapolis with a crazy dense population and barely any bike roads. In comparison, Copenhagen is a tiny town with less than 1 million people with a lot of bike paths. If I would have to explain the biking experience in short in the two cities, Tokyo is relaxed chaos, while Copenhagen is more like stick to the right of the many well-built bike lanes, otherwise someone is gonna yell at you to get out of the way. In both cities, it just makes sense to get around on a bike. But before we dive deeper into the differences, this part is to my fellow residents of the vertically challenged Copenhagen. Let me introduce you to this wild concept, a hill. A hill is a piece of land that rises higher than everything surrounding it. It looks like a little bump in the earth. Since they are higher than everything around them, hills are good places to get a nice view. We have none of these here in Copenhagen, but Tokyo is full of them, so let this be the beginning of the differences. Let's look at a Japanese versus a Danish bike. I mean, it's fairly standard, right? A bike is a bike, but there are some differences. This one in Tokyo is called a mamachari, which roughly translates to mom's bike. These iconic bikes are featured in countless movies, animes, pop cultural things, and almost everyone owns one of them, regardless of their reproductive organs, income, or age. A lot of people have them. They are cheap, you can put your shopping or a cat in there. Some people have 2 kids sit on them, or absolutely ridiculous rain covers. Obviously, there are many different types of bikes in Tokyo, but mamacharis are pretty much standard in my experience. This one is an electric mamachari. Basket, child seat, it has 3 strengths of assist, a button for the lights, and another one for shooting at a Pokeball if you see a Pokemon. In Copenhagen, I think you get to see a bigger bike variety. Yeah, there are the usual Copenhagen style bikes, but you see a lot of road bikes, cargo bikes, mountain bikes, and other weird stuff all the time out here. One key difference is that most bikes have a foot brake in Copenhagen. In Japan, I have never seen a bike like this. And an equivalent bike to the mamachari is this electric one in Copenhagen, which is a bit different to the Japanese mom's bikes. It has only one handbrake for the front wheel, an internal gear system because it rains so much, and it has a button that drives the bike at a walking speed, so you don't even have to pedal. I would say electric bikes in Copenhagen are assisted a lot more, so you don't have to pedal as hard, and I think the speed is limited to 25 kilometers in both cities. Bikes are definitely cheaper in Tokyo. Even when I compare used bikes in Copenhagen to mamacharis, they are still more expensive. And the same goes for servicing and parts as well, they are still cheaper in Tokyo. So yeah, I think this is probably one of the biggest differences, the biking infrastructure. In short, Copenhagen has amazing bike paths all around the city, whereas in Tokyo, the parking infrastructure near stations is just on another level. Both cities have a crazy amount of cyclists, but Copenhagen is far ahead with its bike roads. I've read somewhere that biking in Tokyo works so well not because of its infrastructure, but because of its people, and I tend to agree with this sentiment. Let me explain why. In Copenhagen, you simply stick to the bike roads and the actual roads, if there's not a separate path. You do not walk on the bike paths, you don't drive cars there, you can ride your bike and a small scooter here. That's that. There's no confusion here. And while we are not allowed to ride a bike on the footpath, we have bike-only bridges and other crazy stuff. In Tokyo, it is much more of a free-for-all. Ride on the road? Sure. Ride on the footpath? No problem. Right across the world's busiest pedestrian crossing? Why the f not? Pedestrians and drivers are both super chill with the bike riders in Tokyo. You barely hear anyone honking or see someone getting angry at another biker. They simply just swerve around each other and go on with their day. I would say that most people in Tokyo use a bike to ride from home to their local station, park it there and hop on a train or the subway. They do the shopping and other chores with the bikes, but most wouldn't really use it to do the full commute to their workplace or school unless it is fairly close. This is quite the opposite in Copenhagen, where it is not uncommon to have people who ride 40 minutes to an hour one way from home to their workplace. Apparently over 62% of us do a full commute with a bike, whereas in Tokyo it's somewhere around 14%. That doesn't mean that Copenhageners do not ride and park their bikes near train stations at all. Most stations will have spaces to leave your bike, but the parking facilities are incomparable to what it is in Tokyo. Automated parking stations and smaller bike storage with staff members who have been working there for 20 plus years to give you a ticket. Electric tracks to keep you push up your bike on slope and so on. Some of these parking areas have daily spots which you pay as you go, around 100 yen per day, but if you want a fixed pass, often you have to wait 2 to 3 years for a free spot to come up. In Copenhagen, you can take bikes on public transport. For example, the local trains within the city all have special bike places built where you can put your cycles. You can also take the bikes on the metro, whereas in Tokyo this is a bit more complex. Yes, you can bring your bike onto the JR trains, but your bike either has to be a foldable one, or you need to disassemble it, take off the wheels, and it must be put into your carry bag. The trains do not have a specific area for bikes, and they are way too packed for this anyway, I think. Biking for leisure is also huge in Copenhagen. You'll see packs of bikers in full lycra gear riding around the city on the weekends, and of course doing bike tours around the country itself. This is not really a big thing in Tokyo. I guess it also comes down to missing the proper infrastructure for this. But as I said before, biking is more of a transportation thing rather than a recreational. A super important thing is that it is sometimes very hard to park a bike in Tokyo for a full day if you're not near a station. Maybe that also explains the lower percentage of commuters. As a newcomer to Copenhagen, you might feel intimidated by the sheer amount of bike riders and the speed of the traffic. But ultimately, I would say that it is much safer to get around, as riders need to stick to the bike roads, and most people use hand signs to let you know what they are going to do next. Or they let you know if you messed up. Also, drivers are a lot more aware of bikers in Copenhagen and tend to give way to them as per the traffic rules. See this driver turning to me on the left in Tokyo? In Copenhagen, they would have to give me way on the bicycle. There's even a painted path for the bikes here, but still, it doesn't matter. While in Tokyo biking is a lot more laid back thanks to the rules being pretty lax, it also means that it is a lot more chaotic. People cross roads from all directions, not even waiting for the green. They ride on the wrong side of the road and all that. There are some rules, like the one that says that you shouldn't really ride on the footpath if there's no markings, but if the popo is also doing this, then I guess I'm also allowed to ride there. If you have never ridden a bike during a typhoon while you're holding onto your umbrella, did you even bike at all? I mean, this is kind of illegal and the police is gonna stop you for this, but a lot of people do this in Tokyo. Let's talk about getting to your destination in one piece. Wearing a helmet is pretty common in Copenhagen. If you have kids on your bike, you are required to put them in child seats with the belts on, but helmets are not required for some reason. Nonetheless, most people have it on their kids. When it comes down to Tokyo, you might notice a difference. It is rare that people wear helmets, and perhaps more surprisingly, often kids do not have one either. It is mandatory to have bike insurance in Tokyo, which is around 5,000 yen per year, and it is mostly for liability. Something similar goes for Copenhagen, where bike liability insurance is included in many of the home insurance policies. In my case, this covers not just the liability insurance, but also if my bike gets stolen. Another thing that I heard so many times is that Tokyo is so safe that bikes don't even have locks on them. This is just not true. Because yeah, Tokyo is fairly safe, but literally all the bikes have locks on them. They're just on the back wheel, right below the saddle. The same goes for Copenhagen. So do your bike get stolen at all? A definite yes to Copenhagen. It is actually not a bad thing if you have a fairly bad looking rusty bike that still rides well, as it is less likely to be stolen. In Tokyo, bikes might get stolen a lot less, but if you park them illegally, they are taken away pretty damn fast by the city workers. So I wouldn't risk parking my bike near a train station illegally, as it will be taken away, and you'll have to go to a yard and pay a fine for the pickup, as it happened to me. Even though it was a public holiday, they still took it away. So which city is better? Frankly, this is quite subjective. Tokyo is my favorite city that I ever got to live in, and its biking culture is a big part of that. But the freedom that the bikeable Copenhagen gives you is just incomparable. A city that is small enough that is easily bikeable throughout the year gives you so much freedom and extra time, so I think my vote is on Copenhagen being the better place for biking. Also, the quality of public transportation is very hard to compare to the high standards of Tokyo, so that gives me an extra push to stay on my bike throughout the year in Copenhagen, and the local trains are not the best. What do you think? Which city would you prefer to ride in? Have you ever tried biking in either one of these cities? If you're interested in what biking looks like from a first-person view in Tokyo or in Copenhagen, you can check out these videos. Otherwise, you can also subscribe. Thanks for watching.